Good morning. My name is Candace Woodside, and today I will be talking to you about ADHD effects on learning in your classroom. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, ADHD, is a disorder typically characterized by a lack of focus, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. While it may seem that ADHD has only been recognized in the classroom in the past 20 years, there has actually been literature on ADHD dating back into the 18th century. Even though attention and impulse control problems have long been reported in the classroom, it wasn't until the 1960s that it was recognized as a mental disorder and began being treated. The prevalence of ADHD diagnoses in our classrooms has caused educational institutions to adapt to the learning needs of these students. Today, I will be addressing 4 areas of ADHD in education and how we can address the needs of these students. How does ADHD affect learning in your classroom? First, there is a constant need for movement. Children with ADHD have a difficult time regulating their bodily movements. This will be observed as tapping, shaking, moving, sometimes without even realizing that they're doing it. Second, they are extremely distractible, causing them to easily lose focus. Sometimes it's the impressions of their own writing on the back of the page. It's another student moving. Sometimes it's as simple as the air conditioning kicking on. Third is poor impulse control. These students sometimes blurt out when others are talking or during your lectures or your instruction in the classroom. Other times they just get up and randomly walk around the classroom without asking for permission, and there's no excuse or reason why they're doing what they're doing. A lack of academic success. Sitting still, being quiet, listening to directions, and following instructions are extremely difficult for these students. Because of these difficulties, these students tend to do poorly in the classroom academically. I'd like us to take some time for discussion. What types of behaviors have you seen in your classroom? How can I help my students in these 4 areas? First, provide guided opportunities for movement. To address this, give them maybe an opportunity to get out of their seat after every 15 to 20 minutes of instruction. And I know this seems like an interruption in your day, but the interruptions that you are going to have if they cannot get up and move, with you having to redirect them constantly, will probably equal more than just the couple of seconds that you allow them to get up and move around the classroom. Also, when they're needing to sit still, possibly giving them something that has a sensory activity. I have students that squeeze stress balls because it's quiet and it gives them something to do with their hands so they're not tapping and drawing attention to themselves. I also implement exercise balls in my classroom where they sit on them and it gives them an opportunity to bounce and move. I know they also have wiggle seats, which allows them to shake and move a little bit in their seat without getting up and moving around, or the ones where they have the little pedals where you can do your feet back and forth. I know they sell those individually, but they also have seats that is attached to them, and that gives them that movement that they're needing without it being a disruption to the classroom. Limit their distractions. Sit them at the front of the room, away from windows and doors where people can come in and out, or they see students passing by. If you're able to cover your windows or your doors some, that's always an opportunity, or close your blinds. I also will seat them in front of me where I am teaching or close to my desk. If we're using technology, I have the setting where the notifications are turned off and no pop-ups are allowed, so they don't have something flashing on their screen distracting them from what we are looking at. I also develop and implement a behavior plan in my classroom that rewards them for the desired behaviors. I talk through what is expected so they know what I expect from them, and they also know what the rewards and the consequences will be if I receive the behaviors that I need or those that are not appropriate, and I try to be immediate with rewards and reprimands. Implement accommodations using different instruction techniques, materials, and intervene when you see that behaviors are escalating, so you thwart what could be something that becomes a major distraction in your classroom. At this time, I'd like to have discussion. Has anyone used any of these strategies in your classroom, and what were your outcomes? Next, what can you do in a regular classroom to help your students? Most of us do not teach in a separated classroom like we used to have SED classrooms where it was strictly students that were in that classroom. They were not included in normal classrooms or what we consider regular classrooms. Those of us that are in education today, that is typically what we have. We are not ESE certified. We're just the normal, typical certification in the classroom dealing with these behaviors. Sometimes kids that do not have IEPs, they are not 504s, and they are unmedicated and do not have anything on their files to help you with interventions. These are the things that we can do to help you in your classroom. First, classroom rules and structure. Begin the year with your classroom rules in your classroom where they are seen, rehearse them, review them daily until the students know and follow. Have the structure in place of what is expected when they come in the classroom, how you want them to come in your classroom, get to their desks, and how to leave your classroom. And do it throughout the year. Praise your students for appropriate behaviors, making sure that you praise your student 5 times for every negative comment that is given. And I know that that seems impossible, but it is possible. Also, give directed praise specific to the behavior that they exhibited and to the students so they know what they've done right so they can repeat it. Use specific commands when giving instructions. These students do not do well with generalities, so be specific in what it is that you are wanting from them. Give frequent and immediate feedback. If a student has given you what you are wanting, let them know. And be specific about what you're glad that they have done. Also, if the feedback is negative, make sure that it is immediate as well so they can correlate what they have done so they know not to do it again. Break down assignments into smaller chunks. We have a wide range of learners in our classrooms, and they might have students that do not need these smaller chunks, and you can have this broken down and written on the board so they know what is coming, or you can give it in a graphic organizer so they have what they need specific to them. And I know that this is a little bit more work, but it will provide dividends in your classroom. Reprimands should be clear, brief, and immediate. They don't need long, drawn-out discussions. They don't need a diatribe on what it is that they have done wrong. Be clear, be brief, and be immediate so they know what they need. Continued. Create work with fewer items. Once again, with different learners in your class, your tests don't need to be the same, or your assessments don't need to be the same for every student. So maybe give fewer questions, or don't give the same difficulty of question to the learners in your classroom. Use graphic organizers to assist with note taking. I have discovered with the students that I have that have ADHD in my classrooms, if you take a look at their notes look like they have ADHD. They're very disorganized. They do, even though you might give your notes in a way that flows and you would think it would be simple and easy for them to follow along just listing what you have, they do not, because that's not the way that their brain sees it. Therefore, it is scattered and all over their paper, and just a simple use of a graphic organizer of what you want done. Maybe it's the initial question or the essential question of the day, and then the different notes of how you want them to learn and structure the information. Just a simple graphic organizer can help their note taking tremendously, so when they come back to study or they're using their notes as a resource for quizzes or tests, it's easier for them to follow because they know what they're looking at. Accept late work and give partial credit. I know this can be a sticking point for educators in their classroom because we feel that it encourages students to turn in late work. I myself do take in late work. They do have a consequence for it being turned in late. They do lose points for late work, but I do accept it to a certain point, and then I have a cutoff date, and at the beginning in the structure of my classroom, I let them know what that is, and I stick to it throughout the year. I also give partial credit for partial work, so if they've completed some and haven't given all of it, they still get some credit as opposed to a 0. I also let them retake quizzes and tests when they do poorly. We have a benchmark in our classroom of what is an acceptable test grade or quiz grade or assessment grade. And if they do not make that, I give it back to them to rework to receive partial credit for reworked problems. Use visual aids and vary the pace of instruction. This could be charts. This could be PowerPoint, such as what I'm using today. It can be videos, anything that just changes what you're doing in the classroom, whether it be writing on the whiteboard or having the students come up and work with the smartboard or the whiteboard or whatever you may be using in the classroom. I have also implemented different games to help review instruction and information, such as plickers, where they get to hold up a little card that has a QR code on it, and I scan that code with my phone, and it automatically shows on my smart board who has gotten the question right and who has not, and they are able to vary the QR code by turning it or choosing a different location, and I rescan so they can see immediately if they've gotten it right. Varying the pace of instruction is just simply switching from what you're doing to something else that might be quicker, like rapid fire fast facts in math, or quick bullet questions in literature of what we've just read to study comprehension to see if they're understanding what they're doing. If possible, do the most difficult work first in your classroom. Typically, students that are medicated, their medication is kicking in maybe within the first 30 minutes of classroom. So if you can get to that difficult work first, where they're fresh and they're new and they're ready to focus and their medication is kicked in, then you might get better success as opposed to later in the day when they have been sitting in classes for 3 to 4 hours. They are more distractible, they are more energetic and looking not to work, but the lack of focus is there maybe at the beginning of your class, that you can hit that difficult work first. Give tests in the way that they do best, whether that be orally, fill in the blank. Multiple choice is typically not a good way to test these students because there's too many options. Maybe you could limit the options to 2 instead of 4. Or to give, with your fill in the blanks, maybe give a little bit more information and have the answer given in the fill in the blanks where they're just filling in missing words. For discussion, how can I implement these in my classroom? Also, are there other strategies that you have found to be helpful in your classroom that we can implement as we move into our classrooms? Finally, these are the Sources that I used to help me with the information, as well as my own personal experience in teaching. I hope that you have found this to be helpful and that you will be able to use some of the things that I have given you today to help you to be successful in your classroom. Have a great day.